Tom, thank you very much. I was giving a speech to a relatively conservative group, the Alabama Business Council, and a guy came up to me after the speech and said, "You know, you're not half as crazy as I thought you were." So thank you, Tom, for your wonderful compliment. Well, actually, let me thank Anita Dunn for setting the stage. I don't agree with everything she said, but I agree with most of it, and some of the numbers were really interesting that I hadn't heard before. I'm going to talk about some things that are going to be not so controversial, and then talk about some things that are really controversial. And I'm going to try to all do it in no more than 15 minutes, because I really do want to have plenty of time for questions and comments, and in my party, as we say, rude remarks as necessary. First of all, the obviously overwhelming issue that was driving everything in this campaign was the economy, which had relatively little to do with Obama. Obama didn't cause this. I actually think he, and I'll be bipartisan about this, and the latter few months of the Bush administration worked together to save the world, of course, with a lot of help from people on this side of the Atlantic, from a complete economic collapse. And I don't think it serves us to go back and look at why that might have been the case. It is getting better, but you can't sell that. When a 10% unemployment, or nearly 10% unemployment rate, to say that just because we've created jobs every month for the last 3 months, including a pretty decent private sector report this past week, is not good enough. And most people, if you're not feeling the economy getting better, as Gerald Ford found out, then it's not getting better, no matter what the numbers show. And so that was the biggest thing. And the other problem with the economy is that it's an overhang to everything else. If you're in a lousy mood because of the economy, then you're less likely to be tolerant about other things. And that's going to be an important point I don't want you to forget when I get to the end of what I have to say. Are there some miscues? Of course there's some miscues. The president, like Bill Clinton and most other, particularly Democratic presidents that have come in, didn't have a lot of experience at the federal level. And he had a tough first 2 years. There were some mistakes made, and I'm sure that Brad will tell you all what they were. I don't feel like going over them, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to do that in the question and answer period. And some messaging mistakes, which I thought Anita did a really nice job on. But here's what I really want to talk about, because I think this is the last gasp, not a historic election of proportions, blah, blah, blah. Here's what you have to understand about what's happened in American politics. In 2008, more people under the age of 35 voted than voted who were over 65. That has never happened in my life in politics. 65-year-olds and up were always the holy grail. They always turned out in huge numbers. More people under 35 voted in this past election in 2008 than voted who were over 65. Now, that means this president's the first president of a new generation, much as John F. Kennedy was, even though he may not be in that generation. And what is the difference between this new generation of voters and our generation of voters? First of all, they are interested in seeking out commonality and not our differences. The principal question to our generation is, when are you going to stop fighting about the things you've been fighting about for 30 years and start doing something about the things you can agree on? Second of all, their ideological bandwidth is much narrower. There are much fewer people on the far right, fewer people on the far left in this generation. Third of all, they are truly multicultural. The first multicultural generation in a multicultural country that's existed for 400 years. What do I mean by that? I, as you would expect, was a very strong proponent of the civil rights in the civil rights era of civil rights. But I didn't grow up with anybody who looked very different than me. This generation has friends of every race, every nationality, every ethnicity, every religion, and every sexual orientation, and they all date each other. Now, why does that matter? Because the Republicans have about 35% of their vote that they depend on by motivating them through anger. Mostly, in this case, last election was anti-gay and anti-immigrant. So that creates a solidarity among the under 35s. The under 35s are gettable by Republicans because they're more fiscally conservative than the left wing of our party is, and especially going to be even more conservative after what they're going through right now economically. But they will not abandon their friends to divisive social rhetoric. Now, if you look at who's in the Tea Party, which I think was a driving force in this election, they're all 55 years old and older and white. they don't look anything like the electorate. And it is true that there was a difference. I thought that was a fascinating statistic that Anita gave, that if the same electorate had come out in 2008, it would have been 45-45. It obviously wasn't the similar voters, and the younger generations stayed home and so forth and so on. But time is not on the side of the Tea Party, and they know it, and that is one of the drivers in the vote. I don't subscribe to the theory that the majority of Tea Party people are racist. There is a racist fringe, of course, but that's, only the news, of course, seizes upon that unfairly. It's too bad. I actually kind of like the Tea Party. I don't agree with their views on a lot of things, but I like the idea of American citizens taking the constitutional rights into their own hands and influencing their government. It's exactly what my campaign was about, from a different direction, is that ordinary people matter in a democracy. When they stop mattering, the democracy starts losing its democratic flavor. But this new generation is a true multicultural generation, and now we have a multicultural president. So in a down economy, where if you're 55 years old and you lose your job, you're either never going to get another one, or you'll get one at half or a third of the pay, you can understand that all of a sudden you don't recognize your country anymore. That all of a sudden what's happening in California, where there is no majority. In California, there are African Americans, there are Anglos, there are Hispanics, there are American Indians, Asian Americans, but none of them are in the majority. That's the case with this country in 2050. And now, for the first time, America sees this in our own president. It is unsettling. Again, there is a racist fringe, but to be uncomfortable with change, I don't think is racist. I don't think that the majority... By the way, in my view, there are 3 Tea Parties. There is the large membership that went to the polls and got excited and organized efficiently and made a difference. There is a smaller racist fringe, which unfortunately the news media focuses on. I think that's a mischaracterization of what they're really like. And then there are the Dick Armey and the corporate people of the world who are trying to funnel corporate money and co-opt the Tea Party, which the Tea Party is terrified of, and that's not going to happen, I don't think. So, in the next presidential election, it won't be the under 35s that elect Barack Obama, it'll be the under 39s. And after that, it'll be under 43. And after that, it'll be under 47. You can't reverse the democratic change. All you can hope is, if you're a Republican, to start diversifying your party. And you can't, and this is, look, I'm friends with people like Mike Duncan, who was my counterpart when I was the chairman of the Democratic Party. These are decent people. They're very conservative, but I like them a lot. And they know this. If you can't diversify your party in the most diverse nation on the face of the earth, that you can't win elections if everybody comes to the polls. So whether the president gets reelected or not is going to have a lot to do with the economy. But if the same people come out to vote that came out in 2008, we're going to win that one too. And we're going to take back some of the seats. The pendulum will swing. I don't think the politics in this election was about the pendulum swinging. I think it was about a smaller electorate. I think it was about an economy that is doing better. But we came so close to having the next Great Depression. I personally think that both Bush's people and Obama's people get some credit for getting out of it. I hated the bank bailout and the car bailout. It was necessary. What Paulson did was the right thing to do. Did he have conflicts with Goldman? Sure. But if we hadn't done those things, we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now, because the sponsors wouldn't have been able to afford to put this on. So we came close. I think this election is a fascinating election. I think it's a good election. I'm just going to finish off by saying this. It's a good election because I happen to believe that we can't stimulate our way out of this. I'm a Keynesian. I think Obama did the right thing with the stimulus package. The CBO shows that it increased jobs, that it decreased unemployment rate from what it would have been. Again, an unsaleable proposition to an electorate, but in fact, it happens to be true, or at least according to the CBO, which is about the only nonpartisan group left in Washington doing any budget work. So what could happen? The most likely thing that could happen is nothing, because Boehner's got a terrible problem now. He's got a whole bunch of true believers in the Congress that have promised never to compromise, including people like Mike Pence, who should know better. And if you want to get anything done, there's going to have to be a compromise. But maybe we can get something done. Here's the litmus test. The litmus test is the Bush tax cuts for the upscale people. Because if the House passes those, which is a smart political thing for them to do, without paying for them, as was done 10 years ago, then Republicans are no more serious about dealing with the deficit than they were 10 years ago. If you pass the tax cuts without the cuts in the budget to pay for them, then you're not serious about the deficit. That's a political speech. If you pass the tax cuts with the cuts in the budget to pay for them, then they're serious about balancing the budget, and we can have a serious discussion. I believe the deficit is the most serious problem facing the United States of America, more serious than terrorism. I believe there's only one way to fix the deficit, and it's a bipartisan way to do it. If you only talk about cutting entitlements, the Democrats will land on you and will demagogue that issue. If you talk about cutting taxes, the Democrats will land on you. If you demagogue tax increases, the Republicans can do that to us. There are 4 huge expenditure items: Social Security, Medicare, taxes on the tax breaks for the wealthy, and defense. They all 4 have to be cut or dealt with. The defense, 2 entitlements have to be cut, taxes have to be raised, at least on the wealthy. I will concede that while the Bush tax cuts were a bad policy, you can't raise taxes on the middle class during a recession, because every dime that they take home in their pocketbooks ends up stimulating the economy. That's not true of people who are at the upper end, and however you want to define that. In New York, it's not 250,000, but in Omaha, it certainly is. So we're going to see very quickly whether this Congress is going to be a political Congress and they're just going to make political points at each other's expenses, or whether there's actually going to be some seriousness of purpose. When the President's Budget Commission, whatever its official name of it is, comes in, we're going to see what their recommendations are. And if both parties line up, with the Republicans pointing the finger about us at raising taxes and the Democrats pointing the finger at the Republicans over restraining Social Security and Medicare, we're going to be back to business as usual and nothing will get done. I'm afraid I don't favor that, but that's where I think we're headed. So I would predict, if I had to make a prediction today, nothing would get done and President Obama will be reelected in 2012.